Welcome back to City Studders. I'm here in the kitchen with my little assistant. Today is Saturday, and what does that mean?
We make kombucha.
It is kombucha day today, so we're going to bring you along and show you how to make kombucha. It's very easy, and it's so much cheaper than the stores. I don't know if any of you have bought kombucha in the stores. It is very pricey. You can do this for pennies at home. So come along with us and we'll teach you how. So the very first thing that you're going to need when you get started with making kombucha is a SCOBY. This is your SCOBY right here. It's slimy. It kind of feels like a squid maybe. I've had people say it looks like a squid or an octopus. You cannot make kombucha without that. That is the mother culture required to make kombucha. So SCOBY means symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast. People refer to it as a mushroom as well, although it's not really a mushroom. The second thing you need besides the SCOBY is at least a cup of starter liquid. And this is tea that has been already fermenting for at least a week. So SCOBYs you can find from a friend. That's how I got started in kombucha. I had a friend give me a SCOBY with the liquid. I've heard you can find them online. I have not personally looked online, but if you have a friend that can offer you a SCOBY to get started in kombucha, that would be my preferred way. Okay, now that you've got your SCOBY home, you're probably wondering what to do with it. So I'm going to give you the recipe for a half gallon's worth of kombucha. So the first thing that you need to do is steep 4 tea bags in a half gallon of water. You want to add a half a cup of sugar. So let's do that. Before we do that step, I do need to make a note about tea that you want to use for your kombucha. Online, it is only recommended that you use green tea or black tea. I have personally used chamomile tea and lavender tea and been just fine. You do take a risk with that though. It's never recommended that you use anything other than green tea and black tea, but if you get adventurous, feel free to try. I have heard that cinnamon tea is really bad for SCOBYs, so just be aware of that when you start your kombucha. I have my little helper over here. She's going to mix up the tea for us. First of all, why don't you go ahead and dump in that half a cup of sugar and mix it up good with that mixer. Till it dissolves.
Dissolves?
Yep. All right, now we're going to add 4 tea bags and let them steep. Good job. Now that our tea has cooled, we're going to add it to our SCOBY and starter liquid. Now clearly, I'm not going to use the whole half gallon in this jar, and that is okay. It means nothing that I have to put some away for later. Now here we are with your SCOBY. It usually floats around. Eventually it will rise to the top. Try not to touch it or move it a lot. It forms like a seal along the top of your jar. You want that. It helps with fermentation and everything. So once your SCOBY rises back up to the top, just leave it alone. Also, you're going to need to put some kind of a protection over the top. Gnats love kombucha as much as humans, so I take a coffee filter and I put a rubber band around the top, and now it's safe from gnats and bugs. The next thing to do is put it in a dark place. This is where I keep my kombucha stuff. I have all my jars and I keep my kombucha in a cupboard. It needs to be a warm place. There's a heater right underneath this cupboard, so it keeps it nice and toasty in here. You want it in a warm space that's dark. So now that you have finished your kombucha for the very first time, you're gonna let this sit here. Do not touch it for a week. Let it be for a week. And after a week, you're going to do the next step, which is adding your flavorings and your second fermentation. I'll show you how to do that. So I also want to say, if you are new to kombucha and have never tried it before and really want to try, if you know me, you're a friend or a family and you're in my area, I would love to give that kombucha away that we just made together. So hit me up on this video or send me a text or email. I would love to get that into your hands so you can start kombucha. So I do want to give a helpful tip. Pick a kombucha making day. That way it can be something you look forward to and something that you remember. So Saturdays are my kombucha making day, as we said earlier in the video. And the reason I do that is because it's just a convenient day and it's what I do right away in the morning. So pick a day so you don't forget about it and let your SCOBY go nasty. If you let your SCOBY go for, I would say, don't let it go for much more than a week. It tastes like apple cider vinegar if you let it go too long, and it's unbearable and you can't drink it. So put a date on the calendar every week that you can do your second fermentation like we're about to do. Don't forget about it, otherwise you're going to end up with something really gross. So now we are about to do our second fermentation. You have a couple of different options on the flavoring part. Some people don't want to flavor their kombucha for the second fermentation, and that's completely fine. My family really loves adding extra flavoring. The easiest way is to find some store-bought juice. These are my family's personal favorites. You want to make sure that the juice is 100% juice, and these V8 juices are. This is my son's favorite. Almost everybody who tries my homemade kombucha loves Aldi's version of pomegranate plum, 100% juice again. This is the easiest way to flavor your kombucha. You don't have to do any chopping or cutting of anything. You just put a half a cup in with your jars. We'll do that together. I'll show you how in a minute. Or you can pick fruit. My kids' all-time favorite kombucha is strawberry lemonade. So you cut up pieces of strawberries and lemons and you just put it directly into the jar, and that flavors it. I add a little bit of sugar to it because clearly this is not going to be as sugary as your juices. So I do add a little bit of extra sugar just to sweeten the kombucha a bit. I've never tried orange before and I don't know why, so we're going to experiment with orange today and see how that kombucha turns out. Also blueberries, if you smash them up in a bowl and let them kind of soak in some sugar, that makes another really great kombucha. My little helper is going to help cut up some strawberries. We already have the lemons chopped. So we want to cut them in little tiny pieces so they fit inside of our jars, right? Good job. All right, what are we doing now?
We're smashing up blueberries.
We're smashing the blueberries. Do you want to add a little sugar to those blueberries? That's a tablespoon of sugar we're going to add to the blueberries. You can just pour it all in, honey. Just pour it around. Give it a little extra sweetness. And your yeast and bacteria actually consume the sugar, so by the time you drink the kombucha, a lot of the sugar is gone. So if you're worried about sugar intake, it's really not that terrible. Good job, babe. Okay, so we're gonna get started on our second fermentation. Now remember that this is only for people who have let their SCOBY sit out for a week. So this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna add a little bit of sugar to this. You don't have to do this step, my kids like it. We're gonna do the strawberry lemon to begin with. I'm gonna squeeze a little bit of the juice in the bottom. All right, do you wanna put the strawberries in? We'll do one more lemon. Squeeze some lemon in there. There we go. All right, we're gonna fill up our bottle. Now, as much as I love these dispensers, It's funny because sometimes the SCOBY, little chunks get stuck in here, so it can be slow going sometimes. So this is about how full you want to fill up your kombucha. Now we're gonna screw on the lid really tight and label it. There we go, I labeled SL for strawberry lemonade. And I do this with a permanent marker. Some people put tape on the side. I just use a magic eraser and take off the permanent marker when I go to wash the lids. But this way I know what I'm making, especially when I use juice instead of real fruit. Now that we're done with this, we are going to set it in a dark, warm place, just like we did with our other kombucha. Now, if you use real fruit, it will probably be done in 2 to 3 days. If you're using fruit juice from the store, I let it sit up to a week. Definitely don't let it go any further. If you see any kind of bows on the top of your lids, there's a lot of pressure in there, so you don't want it to do that. I have had jars explode on me, so just be aware that if you let this sit out too long, your jars can explode from the pressure inside. It's only happened a handful of times, but just make sure you come back and check on these in 3 days. Now we're gonna do the store-bought juice. We are putting a 1/2 cup of juice. The funnel is pretty necessary. I think you're gonna have a big, huge mess if you don't use a funnel for this step. So there's our 1/2 cup of fruit juice. We're not going to add any additional sugar. The juice is sugary enough. And we're going to fill this up to about the same amount as we did with the last one, leaving a little space at the top. Okay, this one is done. It is labeled, and now we are going to move it underneath the cupboard. And again, I let these sit out for a week. That's just me. You might want to check your kombucha after 3-4 days just to make sure it's not getting too fizzy inside and too much pressure building up. So we're gonna go ahead and put that under there and let it sit for the second fermentation. So one thing I failed to mention, when you are done with your second fermentation, you need to put those into the refrigerator to keep them from fermenting further. That's how you stop the fermentation, is by putting them in the refrigerator. So I am now at the point where I don't have a whole lot of liquid left in the bottom. You can tell that's a gallon size. There's some that I've reserved in the bottom. So I'm at this point. I made some tea over here. I'm gonna let it cool before I put it in. But again, 1/2 cup of sugar, 4 tea bags. I'm going to put this in here and let this sit for another week. Something I also want to mention about this kombucha. This SCOBY is getting really thick. I could take about from here down to here, that much out, and be left with this little piece on the top, and that would be plenty. So there are times you're gonna wanna split your SCOBY and maybe give it to a friend or compost it. I've heard that chickens love it. My quail, not so much, but I've heard chickens love SCOBYs. But yeah, you get to a point like this where you need to split it. Also, I clean these out once every probably 3 months, and it is getting time to clean this one out. So, hey friends, if you know me or family and you want to start some kombucha, I would love to split the SCOBY off and give it to you. I have filled up my kombucha with new tea and sugar, and I have placed it in this corner. Now it is not under the cupboard, it won't fit under there, but it is next to my stovetop where it will be nice and cozy warm, and also next to my crock pot. I'm going to leave this here until next Saturday when I redo the process all over again with the juice and with the fruit. Okay, the last thing I want to talk to you about is kombucha's cousin, or maybe sibling, Jun tea. I'll show you my Jun tea right here. This is my special container of Jun tea. The only difference between this and kombucha is you used raw honey. Instead of your 1/2 cup of sugar, you use 1/2 cup of honey. So Jun tea is more mild. They call it, I've heard it called the champagne of the kombucha world. I really like it a lot, and I like to keep a jar aside for myself. So all kombucha has a little tiny bit of alcohol in it. Jun tea tends to have a little bit more. It's a milder flavor, it's lighter maybe, so Yeah, the only difference is you use raw unfiltered honey. I do add a little bit of honey to it midweek. So if I do my kombucha on Saturday, I like to add a little bit of honey on Wednesday just to keep feeding it. I've heard that you can process this faster than a week. I don't want to have to split my week up between kombucha and Jun tea, so I just do it all on one day, but I just feed it a little bit extra honey on Wednesdays. I hope I answered all your kombucha making questions, and if this is your first time, congratulations. I really hope you enjoy making kombucha as much as I do. If you have any questions that I haven't answered, please feel free to ask them in the comments below. And please like and subscribe to my channel. That really would help me out a lot. Thank you.